Welcome to Capitalize Your Finances, the podcast that's your ultimate guide to mastering personal finances and unlocking the secrets of entrepreneurship. Each week, we dive into the world of personal finance and business development and have fascinating conversations with industry experts, seasoned entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who share their insights, strategies, and stories to help you get ahead in life. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur looking to scale your business or someone just starting out on your financial path, this podcast is your go-to resource for inspiration and actionable insights.
Welcome back to Capitalize Your Finances. As always, I'm your host, Chris Frey-Paniotu, certified financial planning professional, the Cap and Capitalize. And on today's episode, we are going to get into money moves, 4 essential financial planning tips for Gen Z. But before we do that, as always, I got to give you a free tip of the week, which is look at your circle of friends and ask yourself, if you didn't see them for a year and your life didn't change at all, why are they in your life? And if there's no real reason why they are in your life, you should probably get rid of them. Now, I know this is going to sound really harsh, which it is, but think about it. You're actually doing everyone a favor. Because chances are, if you're running into this conundrum, especially if you are a Gen Z where you're starting to compound your success, you're going to start to see the separation between your friends and those in your community that share your views and those that are content with views that oppose yours or are just totally different. And the whole concept of being surrounded by, the concept of being you are who you surround yourself with, or you are the 5 people you spend the most time with, that is incredibly true. And so, this is much more than just simply financial advice. I mean, it's really life advice. But I also want to caution you. I'm not saying that just because someone is not in a similar financial situation that you are in, that means that you need to cut them out. That is far from the truth. I have friends that are infinitely more successful, and then I have friends that, I've just been more fortunate in that situation, okay? But they're genuinely great people. My whole thing is there are so many great people out there, so why would you settle for those that are not great? So, now that is out of the way, let's get into the 4 financial planning tips for Gen Z. So the first one, pretty straightforward, but we're going to get into it a little bit. Number 1, start early and save consistently. So you've probably heard this a ton online, maybe in your home, in school, whatever the case may be. But it's true. Compounding, the power of compounding works best when you start early. So let's just take 2 hypothetical examples here. Let's say that you've got one person that is 20 years old and another person that is 30 years old, and they both start contributing $100 a month. Forget if it's a 401k or an investment account or whatever. Yes, we're investing it for the future, $100 a month, and we're going to earn 7% over that period of time. Now, by the time you retire, okay, which at this point, let's just say that they retire at 60, just to keep things simple. The 30-year-old would have about $113,000, but the 20-year-old would have $239,000. Again, nothing changed. The amount that the 20 and 30-year-old are contributing, $100 a month, didn't change. The investment rate of return that they were earning didn't change. The only thing that changed is the 20-year-old had much more time, and because of that time, the compounding really took off. So, and again, this doesn't include possible pay raises you get or bonuses, or maybe you start a business, you sell a business, or you take it public for those of you that are just, oozing with entrepreneurial vigor. But the point is, you need to start right now. So the second tip that we're going to go over is always educate yourself. There are so many places that you can go to gain knowledge. There's YouTube, there's blogs, there's social media, although you got to be really, really careful with getting advice on social media. As most people giving advice on social media are, they're just flat out phonies, and in some cases, complete morons. Books are great. Masterminds, although I can argue pros and cons for masterminds. But the point is, I could go on for days. There is so much out there at your fingertips that you can get a hold of to consistently educate yourself. Now, there's this concept of the 10,000 hour rule of becoming a master at whatever your craft is. I wish it was 10 hours. The sooner you get to that 10,000 hours, in this case, in planning, investing, business, and entrepreneurial advice, the sooner you get there, the better your foundation will be, really just for your overall life. And that will obviously dovetail into your financial success. So never stop educating yourself and always be a student of the game. Because I can tell you, I've met people that think that they're the masters of you name it. And one, they're really painful to talk to because they think they know it all. And even if you do know it all, you don't know it all. You just happen to know a lot, and you can always better yourself. The best people in my life are ones that have committed to being a perpetual student of their craft. We mentioned a couple episodes back, I was speaking with one of my past guests and dear friends, Robert Hagstrom, who is a 2-time author, manages $10 billion, and is borderline a billionaire himself. He has every right to call himself the master, but that's just not in his DNA. He is forever learning. And if someone like that is forever learning, you should as well. So now that we've gone through the first two, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we're going to close out with the next two, and I will have you on your merry little way.
Capitalizers, this episode is sponsored by the best-selling book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. Regardless of where you're at in your financial life, whether you're just beginning to express interest and commitment to your personal finances, at the pinnacle of your career, winding down into retirement, or thinking about your legacy for future generations, this book walks you through every step of the way so you can succeed on your terms and with your own values and passions guiding you. After reading this book, you will officially have Christopher A. Panayiotou, the Cap in Capitalize, in your back pocket, guiding you in detail through every step of the way so that you can take charge of your finances, not the other way around. Head on over to Amazon.com today and start capitalizing your finances to the fullest with this incredible book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to financial framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. And now, back to the episode.
Welcome back to the show. I missed you dearly. I can't speak for everyone on my marketing team, but I sure missed you. And without further ado, we're going to close out with the last two tips, essential financial planning tips for Gen Z, with number 3, avoid debt traps. Notice how I didn't say avoid debt. Avoid debt traps. Student loans, credit card debt, they can be major obstacles in financial freedom. That's pretty obvious. Actually, I can make an argument any debt is going to be an obstacle in financial freedom. But that does not mean that all debts are bad. So there are debt is bad people, and we've spoken about this a ton in past. The debt is bad people, they make this uneducated blanket statement that all debt is bad, you shouldn't be in debt, and if you are just an atrocious human being. That's like the farthest thing from the truth. And honestly, you're leaving millions of dollars on the table. And that's regardless of what you choose to do in life. Like whether you decide to run a massive business and you have the possibility of making millions, or you're an employee at a company and you're really content with where you're at, and you've no desire to grow and have those leaps and bounds that CEOs or executives or whatever have. That's fine. But even with that situation, you're still leaving millions of dollars on the table if you just say, hey, I'm just going to focus on becoming debt-free. Now, I can tell you right now, when it comes to debts, the most important thing you need to know is what the interest rate is on those debts. Now, if you want to know more about that, we have a gargantuan amount of content on this with past episodes, whether it's Capitalize Your Debt. We've spoken about it on other episodes, standalone. So you can go back and listen to a lot of that. But I will tell you this, when you're thinking about the debts that you are taking out, you have to ask yourself what your return on investment will be. So for example, if you take out a student loan and you want to become a doctor or a heart surgeon, I think I wrote about this in my book. The average heart surgeon makes, and I'm going off memory here, according to 2021's research in my book, I think it was like $482,000. So let's just round up to $500,000. Okay, it doesn't really matter what that debt is going to be because it's going to be reasonable relative to the fact that someday you're going to be making $500,000 on average. So there will be that break even. Therefore, it may make sense to take out a student loan of $100,000 or $200,000 because you take out $200,000 in 1 year, you make $500,000, and then the rest of it, your return is like infinite. It's substantial. On the flip side, if you're like, hey, I want to take out a student loan, and then you go and get a degree that you don't really want to use, or there's no break even on it, you got to ask yourself, did that really make a lot of sense? You could use the same thing with, do I buy a new car? Do I lease it? Do I go and buy this new home or an investment property? Do I go and take out a loan to start a new business or for my existing business so I can take it, reinvest it into the business and get my money back in X amount of years, and then you calculate the return. So debt is by no means bad. It can be monumentally important when it comes to capitalizing on your financial success. So don't sweat it. But don't fall into the traps. And the fourth and final tip, the essential tip of financial planning for Gen Z. When it comes to long-term investing, your time horizon should be forever. And if you're just listening in, I use quotes around forever, quote unquote. So Warren Buffett has a famous quote talking about the punch card method. So imagine you are now in the real world, as they say, and you are working and you have the opportunity to make an investment. And the punch card method basically says when you make that investment, you clip the card and now you only have out of the 10 you've one clipped, you only have 9 investment opportunities left for the rest of your life. So if you only had 9 investment options to choose from forever, because once you make another one, then you only have 8, you are going to be extremely careful and critical with every investment that you make because you know that you're going all in. Now, I'm not saying, don't diversify. Diversification is important, although we've talked about that in the past where I think it's totally overblown. It is important to an extent. But the whole point with that is when you live with that punch card methodology in your mind, you become much more involved with your finances, and that is going to lead to a lifetime of financial success. And here's another thing with that. You're probably thinking, well, Chris, if you only give me 10 options and I'm only right maybe 1 or 2 of those times, well, am I even going to be successful? I can tell you the answer is yes. And there's actually research that's been done on this. So there's a couple pieces of research I'm going to give you that have backed this. So in the 1970s, there was this marketing term called the Nifty 50 stocks. And basically what that meant was if you bought these 50 blue chip classic companies, I would never say this, but there was almost a guarantee that you could not be hurt in the long run. Nowadays, it's like the Magnificent Seven, the NVIDIAs, the Microsofts, Google, whatever the case may be. But back then, it was the Nifty 50. Now, there was some controversy back in the day because in 1970, Walmart went public. And so the controversy was Walmart part of the Nifty 50 or not? And so for the purpose of this research and argument, they said, hey, let's make Walmart part of the Nifty 50. And so what they did was they said, okay, we bought Walmart and the other 49 companies equally weighted. So each one had 2%. And they just bought it and they kept it through 2022, I believe it was. And not only did they say, hey, Walmart's going to earn the return that it did, which obviously Walmart has done substantially well for people. They also said, we're going to take every other investment, the 49, and we're going to make them go to 0, which means they just completely crap the bed. Okay. That is not what you want to do. If you had that portfolio even with the other 49 investments going to zero, and all you had was 2% of your portfolio in Walmart, which is a 4% success rate, you would have basically matched the stock market as a whole when it comes to a return standpoint. Okay? Which means you didn't really have to be right all that often. I'll give you another example. There's a famous investor, and I've talked about him ad nauseum, Mohnish Pabrai. Okay, I'm a huge fan. And he was talking about how there's actually a couple stories, one of them of which he had a fund, and he said, hey, I'm going to pick 10 investments, ironically, and I'm going to have 10% weighted in each investment. And once he did that, yes, he rebalances here and there, but for the most part, he just let those ride. And that portfolio, I believe, ended up doing like 30 some odd % over 8 years until he closed it and returned it to investors, which was crazy because the market over that period of time it did nothing. It was flat. Okay. So you're probably thinking, man, he just hit it out of the park with all these investments. Wrong. 3 of them went to zero. 3 of them did, I would say, okay. 3 of them did good. I mean, like by no means bad. That one last investment was up 100x. So you could have made the argument all 9 others could have gone to zero. But he was right really once. And that's all you needed to have. And so with whether it's Mohnish Pabrai or you're just doing your own research, you know, the fact of the matter is when you have a time horizon of forever and you compartmentalize that with the 10 punches, the whole punches methodology, and you're very selective on the investments that you have, without stepping on compliance toes, I can tell you that your future will be financially rewarded to the nth degree. So, with that being said, that concludes today's episode on the 4 essential financial planning tips for Gen Z. It was a quickie. I had an absolute blast, and I cannot wait to have you come back on the show next week. And until next time, keep capitalizing. If you have questions about today's episode or any personal finance questions, please reach out to me at Cap and Capitalize on Instagram, Chris at capitalizeyourfinances.com, or via our website, capitalizepodcast.com. If you want more Capitalize Your Finances content, head on over to capitalizepodcast.com and check out our blog, free resources, book, and online course. As always, I'm your host, Chris Frey-Panayiotou, certified financial planning professional, the Cap and Capitalize. And until next time, keep capitalizing.
The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstances. You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. This material is gathered from sources believed to be reliable. However, its accuracy cannot be guaranteed. Examples cited are hypothetical, are for illustrative purposes only, are not guaranteed, and subject to potential federal and state law amendments. There's no guarantee that you will achieve the results discussed or illustrated. This material should not be considered a solicitation of an offer to sell or buy any specific security or offering. Investors should consult a financial professional to determine whether risks associated with an investment in the shares are compatible with their investment objectives. Diversification strategies do not ensure a profit and cannot protect against losses in a declining market. 401k benefits may be subject to change at your employer's, the governing pensions, or benefit organization's discretion. Christopher A. Panayiotou is a registered representative with and securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The people and companies mentioned in this podcast are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Capitalize Your Finances.